session is focused on Afcfta and gearing up Nigeria as the manufacturing bowl of Africa. We've got Ayo Ibaru, CEO, Director of Northcourt, moderating the session. Tejaswi, who will stay on representing Lagos Free Zone. Jeffrey White, who's the CEO of Agility. And Tayu Bamidoro, co-founder of Max NG. So a great panel and a very relevant discussion given I think there was some recent signings yesterday, as recent as yesterday, for the Afcfta in Nigeria. So definitely a very valid and relevant discussion. And I'll welcome the panel on now if they can just switch on their audios and cameras and we can let them on.
Hi.
Hi, Ayo. Yeah,
hi, Ayo.
Background.
Great to be here. Lovely presentation.
Thank you, Ayo. Thanks for those words.
Okay, so
I see Jeffrey has joined, and so is because I'm going to yeah, perfect. Over to you, Ayo.
Fantastic. Good afternoon, dear panelists. Thanks so much for taking out the time to be here. Ayo, I know this was a bit of a short notice, but you came through as usual. You do. Thank you so much. I watched your video, sir, Mr. Geoffrey. I think it was World Economic Forum. So I have a few questions from your comments there, which I hope you would do justice to. So getting straight into it, this will be the opener question, and I would appreciate your thoughts on this situation. So we're talking about the Afcfta and trying to get Nigeria. As the quote-unquote China or manufacturing bowl of Africa. Now, we all understand that finance, policy, engineering, stakeholder management are key and central to any manufacturing hub. Now, in your view, how do you think Nigeria is doing and what can be improved?
Hi, Ayo, that's to me, is it?
That's to you first. Yes.
Okay, cool. Listen, I think the reality is that when we talk, so Agility is a global logistics company. We do $5.5 billion for the world's largest multinationals, shipping goods around the world for them and end-to-end logistics solutions. And the reality is that we see a huge latent demand where there's increasing appetite from those companies to interact with Africa. And often their first comment to us is, we want to go to Nigeria. Nigeria is 200 million people. It's the largest market. How do we go there? The things that then worry them when they start looking closer is the bureaucracy, the lack of logistics infrastructure, the lack of ease of doing business, etc. And I think there's an issue that the perception of doing business in Nigeria is much worse than the reality of doing business in Nigeria. But we just find that they find the whole process incredibly difficult and incredibly challenging. So I think the way to move forward is twofold. Firstly, to make Nigeria, and I think Lagos Free Zone is a huge step forward, to make Nigeria easier to go and do business. If you look at what we're doing as Agility, we're building a warehouse park on the Ibadan Road that's just about to start construction. Our whole philosophy around that is you come, you sign a lease, you pick up a key, and you move into a world-class warehouse to run your business the next day. There isn't a delay in buying land or process or whatever. So I think to answer your question, Nigeria needs to do two things. One is make the ease of doing business quicker, easier, advertise that and make people understand that it's easier and simpler. And then secondly, to the continental free trade zone aspect, Nigeria is a 200 million person market. The reality is we get customers that are iffy and maybe we go to Nigeria, maybe we don't. One of the constant feedbacks we get is, but it can't be a hub for the whole of West Africa because you can't move goods easily across the border, across the region. I think the continental free trade zone potential for Nigeria is to open that door from 200 million consumers to 400 million consumers. And that will in turn attract a huge amount of foreign direct investment to Nigeria that is saying, great, not only have we got Nigeria as a market, but we can trade across the whole of West Africa. So I think it's hard not to see huge economic upside to Nigeria moving forward with a continental free trade zone. And I think people's first choice is often we'll go to Nigeria first and then want to deal with the whole of West Africa. But currently that's made very difficult because of the bureaucracy and the lack of process.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. TJ, I know you said a lot regarding this in your presentation, which I think was wonderfully put together. But I want to get Tayo's perspective on this, and then we'll come to you on the same question. Tayo.
Hi. Yeah, I guess, can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, fantastic. So, I'll speak to some of the points, around the, ease of doing business, Nigeria being open for business, and also, the opportunity presented by the free trade agreement across the continent. So, I mean, I'm going to be echoing a lot of the points that Jeffrey has made around the fact that, if you're going to take advantage of a larger free trade area, right, that allows you to scale up transactions, create bigger markets, for businesses to be able to thrive, and hopefully, maximize Nigeria's potential as an economic hub, not just for West Africa, but for the entire continent. You have to get more than a few things right? So the challenges around process, we're not new to that. We've lived with that for so many years. And the progress that, we've seen in Nigeria today, with the rapid economic growth, maybe, 7 to 10 years ago, that has slowed down over the last couple of years. I'd like to be very positive that is temporary and things will ultimately recover. But the truth is that, the progress we've seen so far has been in spite of our challenges, definitely not because of it. But I think, we've gotten this far, with some luck, with the large size of our market and a bunch of other things. But if we're going to unlock the full potential of the market and of Nigeria, we're going to have to be a lot more deliberate about making the right changes, making the right investments in infrastructure, investing in road, transport networks. I think the other day there was news about, some new policies coming in around, the government reducing the age of the trucks, that would be put into the country because of some of the incidents we're having. But without sounding too confrontational, you don't focus on the trucks, focus on the roads. If the roads were a lot better, the trucks would break down, a lot less. Beyond that also is the role that technology also, plays, right? And we can't, we have to keep talking about this, ensuring that we're able to leverage technology, a lot more for managing transactions end to end, and it's beyond just tracking vehicles. It's access to emergency services, right? It's the law enforcement system also being connected to the technology systems that we've built, right? And being able to ensure that as people invest in the markets, there's that confidence that they have that their transactions are going to be protected, the logistics networks are going to be safeguarded. There's going to be the right response, if there's an emergency. All of this goes back to process. So what technology does is technology enables process and makes it a lot more efficient. But in a case where a lot of those processes are ambiguous, so I think maybe providing a little bit more insight into Jeff's point around process. It is even just that there actually is process for a lot of things. The challenge is, the information on those processes is not available. Right, go on government websites and try to figure out how to actually get something done. It's a mess. It's hard. You're getting conflicting information from different people depending on who you are talking to, right? So there's a lot to be done around creating a lot more structure in the environment to then accelerate investments. But the reality, of course, is that the opportunities are there. And right now, what you have is the folks who are taking the most advantage of these opportunities are those who are facing the bureaucracy head on. Who are engaging very, very closely, with government actors and going through all the, the humongous amounts of pain that's involved with that process. But the question that we keep asking ourselves is, how much longer are we going to expect people to come in and figure out this mess, right? If we want to fully maximize the opportunity of the free trade agreement, of the free trade area, of accelerating economic growth at, at China level, over a period of 20 years straight on, we're going to have to be a lot more deliberate in figuring out, in helping ensure that we take out a lot of the unnecessary bureaucracy and make it easier for our investors, both local and foreign, to be able to accelerate.
I mean, this is in no way an attempt to summarize what you've just said, but I can hear a lot about us being deliberate and being consistent, and of course making the ease of doing business easier. Just echoing what Geoffrey said. TJ, what are your thoughts?
So first of all, let me say a quick hello to Geoffrey and Tayo here. I'm meeting you both for the first time and glad to be a co-panelist with you on this forum. So in terms of, I mean, I pretty much agree with the remarks that Geoffrey and Tayo made. And in fact, it's encouraging that, the views that were shared by them were pretty much in line with what I was talking about in the previous session. But I'll make two short points here. I mean, there is a lot to be done. And there is no two ways about that. And at the same time, the opportunity is immense because all the macroeconomic factors, whether it is the population, the younger average growth, demographic dividend, are all pointing towards the direction of opportunity, which is waiting to be unlocked. But I think two areas where there needs to be immediate work done. In addition to addressing the ease of doing business, is diversifying away from oil. And this is one point that has been made over and over again by different think tanks and political leaders. And just to give you a sense, I think the manufacturing percentage value add in Nigeria is about 12, is at 12. Against the peak of what it was in 1980, which was at 20. And comparing that against the global average of 16, there is definitely a need to, diversify away from oil and get into manufacturing and services and agricultural sectors. And I think the current government's focus on driving up domestic capabilities by import substitution measures are extremely possibly useful to spur the demand, but they will only take us so far in the long run without a paradigm shift in creating an enabling business environment and a reliable infrastructure backbone. And I think that is the second point that I wanted to make. The infrastructure deficit is very clear to all the stakeholders. And I think it's equally clear to the political leaders and the government of the day, which has rightfully led to a new impetus towards execution and towards embarking upon building fixed infrastructural assets in different sectors, whether it is transport or roads or storage or information and communication technology. And I think the recent deliberations on mandating a fixed percentage of the annual budget towards capital expenditure is also a step in the right direction in terms of underscoring the thought process and the intent of the political class. I think those are encouraging developments, but I think the key will lie in the execution, and as they say, the proof lies in the pudding.
It's interesting you raise those points because it leads me to the next question, which I will direct at Geoffrey. Recently, Nigeria signed up, the concluding aspects of the free trade agreement. And there was a lot of celebration, at least in this part of the world. But I came across a study that argued that Nigeria should not have signed that agreement. Of course, I was wondering why they would say that until I saw their reason. Now, they believe that until a massive infrastructure program was executed, which I think echoes what we've been saying so far. The agreement, should not have been signed. What are your perspectives on this?
So I think you can't wait forever. Nigeria as with most of Africa, has a significant infrastructure deficit. The way you deal with that is encouraging private sector development, particularly in the current environment, where in Nigeria, you've got a collapsed oil price, you've got the impact and very expensive impact of COVID, both on the economy and on government revenues. The reality is, A, you've got to focus on the private sector, and B, you've got to look at ways to grow your market, and you grow your market by going into the Continental Free Trade Agreement. And I agree with TJ totally that the infrastructure is very important to be right, to be efficient. But the reality is, I see development across economic growth really in two phases. Firstly is your regional trade, so reaching out to be a manufacturer in Nigeria, that instead of dealing with 200 million people, Nigerians, you're dealing with 400 million in West Africa, or 1.3 billion across the continent.
Yes,
and then as that generates profitability and jobs and prosperity, you then scale to a further stage where the infrastructure is getting better, your scale of production is getting better, and African producers become competitive in a global market rather than just an African market. So it all, if you like, is incremental steps that enables you to build a much, much bigger market for your businesses in Nigeria. So in my view, without any doubt whatsoever, there is a massive economic upside to getting the Continental Free Trade Zone up and working as quickly as possible. The second point I'd mention on that is infrastructure is very capital intensive. But I think as Teo would agree, and TJ, probably 50% or more of the issue is actually doesn't require capital to sort it. It requires good processes, transparency, efficiency in paperwork and systems, etc., which doesn't call for you pouring cement and spending billions on capex. It requires a total focus on how are we going to simplify and reduce the cost of moving goods into and out of and across West Africa.
Thank you very much for that answer, because it directs me a bit to what many would consider Tayo's forte with Max NG. I mean, he's been running this thing for years, and he's been growing at rates that we haven't seen in a while. So Tayo, my question is along the lines of our logistics framework. What has to change for this logistics framework to carry these aspirations of making Nigeria, the China or the manufacturing hub that we want it to be?
Clearly.
Loud and clear.
Yeah. Just confirm you can hear me clearly. Okay, great. So, yeah, I mean, that's the million-dollar question, right? How do we get our logistics industry and infrastructure up to the level that it needs to get to, right? And I'm actually going to build on Jeffrey's point around. It's a very similar answer, right? Which is that we can go into all the technologies and the new systems and processes that have been built around the world, innovative ideas, and all of that nice, wonderful stuff. But the truth is, ultimately, the challenge here is not necessarily even a lack of capital, right? Whether local capital or global capital, right? The challenge always is about creating the right framework and the right channels to incentivize that capital to be deployed, right, to solve those specific problems. And forgive me, I identify with the Chicago School of Thought, right? Around the fact that free markets, of course, we build regulation here and there, but free markets, for the most part, if you allow them to operate, right, they ultimately will build any economy anywhere in the world, right? And the concept of free markets also means, law and order. It means processes. It means clarity. It means efficient and effective government, right? So, how do we really solve this problem, right? And it's going to be a combination of two things. Number one is the government increasingly realizing that in some cases, they actually might be able to do a lot more by, quote unquote, getting out of the way than by trying to provide artificial interventions and trying to, be too engaged at excessively deep levels with the systems and with the challenges we're trying to solve, right? So I mean, you're talking, tolerance, you're talking agility, and global powerhouses that have done this for years. They've done this in every imaginable part of the world. They've seen it all, right? So it's not so much about the technical challenges, right? It's more about, can we create the frameworks that would allow these folks to come in? And let's face it, as Jeffrey said, infrastructure investments are huge, right? You're not getting your returns in 6 months. You're not getting it in 5 years, right? We're talking 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And if you're going to make an investment that would return over the medium to long term, you need certain reasonable, assurances, that things will be pretty much stable over the medium to long term. So I think what we need to focus a lot on is creating a much more enabling environment. And I know we've abused that, but we've said it so many times. But creating an enabling environment just means creating the frameworks, right? Creating very clear laws, protecting investments, allowing them to come in, allowing them to do what they know how to do best, right? Now, on the part of, say, private sector investors, right, and companies, and I mean, TJ knows about this more than all of us here, right? There's also the perspective, the point of view of also putting in the hard work, right? It's kind of like realizing that you're dealing with a frontier economy that has and over the next 5 to 10 years will have systems that are nowhere near as sophisticated as what you have in Dubai or Western Europe or Singapore, right? So the question then is, how do you engage with economies like this? It requires a lot of understanding, a lot of research, a lot of engagement, a lot of just figuring out how to actually navigate, of course, without necessarily going against any of your core values. Right? If there's any thing that requires you to go against your core values as a company or what you stand for as a global brand, obviously you should not proceed. But still, there are ways to still engage right now. As they say, when the opportunity becomes extremely obvious, it probably is already too late, right? So you don't wait for it to be extremely obvious and then everybody can see it. You actually take the risk a little bit earlier. Now, nobody says you should go in if it's super, super crazy. But I would agree that, it's not like super, super crazy, but there's a ton of work that needs to be done, to really find the opportunity and also execute in a way that allows you to deliver, value and also capture value back for your shareholders. So it's not a mean fit. To summarize, I would say that, we need a little less quote unquote government, right? And we need a lot more freedom, a lot more enablement for private sector players to do what they know how to do best, right? And then we would see a lot more accelerated activity. On the point that was made around, freeing up taking down, trade barriers across the continent, is that something that is premature? Should we double down on investments first? I definitely am on the opposite end of that, and the reason for that is, sometimes it's accelerated economic activity and freedom that pulls infrastructure development, right? So as there's more activity going on, as there's less onerous, foreign trade restrictions around the continent. I strongly believe the more acceleration you would see in infrastructure investments. I mean, think about it that you can produce something out of say northern Nigeria or western Nigeria, and there is very little barrier around your ability to distribute not just within Nigeria but across all the neighboring countries, right? If you're producing something in western Nigeria, for example, your truck would get to Togo faster than it would get to Kaduna, right? So if you take out some of those restrictions that we have and you allow, a much more vibrant trade, what you'd also see is much better levels of efficiencies, because now, manufacturing companies can locate their manufacturing sites at places that make the most sense for them, knowing that, there are less and less barriers around their distribution capabilities and distribution bureaucracies. So I'm definitely for, freeing up, taking down trade barriers across the continent, and also, government maybe, taking a little, time to think about, the engagements with the private sector and kind of like creating frameworks that allow the private sector to do what they know how to do best. context.
It's interesting just listening to three of you speak that this ease of doing business reports, I think we should change it and start a new report, which we might call the government get out of the way report. And then we start assessing how we're doing year in, year out. But it's a lot. It's a lot to unpack, and I wish we had more time, but we don't, so I'll have to jump to the next question. But don't be too surprised if I have a one-pager of tracking how well the government is getting out of the way to be a private report. It won't be for everybody, so that I don't have unnecessary knocks at my door at odd hours of the day. My next question goes to TJ. So aside better manpower, improved administrative efficiencies, in your view, how can Nigeria develop a one-stop shop for all trade-related licensing that actually works? Because the idea I get even from this conversation and from the market participants that I've spoken to is that there just seems to be one roadblock after the other regarding licensing. You need to get this, you need to get that, and it's almost a nightmare. What do you think are the ways of resolving this?
Sure. So I think I'll again use a highly abused term of creating a single window clearance system, but let me risk using it again and provide you some context in terms of how we can actually improve a lot of inefficiencies in the existing system. So technology, I agree with, like Tayo said, is a key enabler of positive disruption in this context. I think we have a lot to learn from how countries like Korea, Japan, Hong Kong, and Singapore have implemented a highly reliable, deep, and efficient single window clearance systems for all trade interfaces with the regulators. There is significant value here to be unlocked by the country in terms of enhancing the same ease of doing business that we have been talking about, and increasing the productivity and transparency, which allows FDI opportunities to look at Nigeria more favorably. I think a common denominator among all these effective single window clearance systems is the fact that they are run as a commercial enterprise. They are not run on government funds. And while Nigeria has successfully implemented what is called Nigeria Single Window Trade Platform, but I think we need to build on that platform and widen and deepen it to cover way more aspects and touch points of what a typical business needs on a day-to-day basis. For instance, the platform should be a single entry and submission platform. It should afford all the investors a paperless environment. It should allow things like simple things like electronic payment, which take away a lot of productive time of the workforce by running between the regulator offices. And I think these are the kind of features that need to be built on to the existing platform that we have. And just one last point that I will also make is that it should not just be a platform that allows easier trade. It should also evolve into a platform that has a much deeper interface with all the government agencies and still act as a single window system, even for new businesses that are exploring Nigeria as an investment destination. I think that is where there is also significant opportunity in the current platform that Nigeria has.
Thanks a lot for that response. My next question goes to Geoffrey. So World Economic Forum 2015, you were interviewed and you hit nail on the head. Africa, Nigeria needs to push the conversation on infrastructure forward. Now, I'd like to believe that there have been improvements since then, but in your view, specifically, how can infrastructure be made to work in Nigeria?
So, I think, again, it's a question of how you generate funding. So I think globally there are people wanting to build roads as toll roads, invest in power plants, invest in infrastructure, ports, airports, etc., within the private sector. So I think the first aspect is government shouldn't believe that they need to do everything themselves, and they should either in public-private partnerships or opening it up to private investment, have the infrastructure, again, without overusing the word, the ease of investing in infrastructure be simpler, faster, clearer, and more efficient. I think part of the, across the whole of Africa, part of the criticism is it takes a huge amount of time to close an infrastructure deal from the private sector in Africa. So something that in Europe or in the developed world will be put to bed and under construction in 2 years will typically take 7 years in Africa to get to the same point of finance closure and moving forward. So what you've got, and that then, if I'm a global investor saying, do I want to spend $1 billion in Nigeria, in West Africa, in Singapore, in the UK, that time effect is hugely costly for me from a human resource perspective and a deployment of capital perspective. So one of the things the government should look to do is compress that process so that if you want to build a power plant in Africa, or if you want to build a port or a capital project, then there's a process that again enables you to do that on the same sort of time frame that you get in the rest of the world, and not the 3-4 times longer time frame that we hit in Africa every time. Even from something simple like us building warehouses, I can build a warehouse from scratch in the rest of the world in around 9 months. Okay, in Nigeria, it's going to take me sort of 14.
Wow. Thank you for that. Got me. Okay. Let me Tayo, so we are all agreed that the free trade, Tayo, I always move to you when, it's getting a bit hot. I'll just come to you and, everything is okay. So we've agreed that the free trade agreement is a good deal, it's a good idea. But in your views, how do you think we can start about diversifying Nigeria's economy? Again, I know it's an overused phrase or word, but it's something that we have to do so that we can ensure the economy is strong enough to pull the infrastructure that we need. How can we diversify Nigeria's economy, of course, in specific terms?
Yeah, that's a really big question, and I mean we can't really do justice to it. But I can share a few thoughts. I'm building on a lot of the points that TJ has made and Jeffrey as well. Diversification is almost like trying to get someone off of drugs, right? Especially if you've had it for 40, 50, 60 years. Getting you off of that addiction is not a trivial venture, right? Very hard. But I think what is actually going on right now is, which on the one hand sounds like a negative thing, but ultimately I think for the medium to long term prosperity of Nigeria is a great thing, right? The fact that the clean energy movement is gaining strength, and globally especially, right? The fact that Tesla, an auto company, right, an electric vehicle company, is now the most valuable auto company in the world, despite churning out a very small fraction of the volumes of the volume of cars that folks like Toyota and Kia are churning out every year, is making a very big and bold statement across the world today, right? So the change is here. It's no longer it's coming. It is here. So diversification right now is now a question of survival. It is no longer a luxury. You see what I mean? So that is great, right? Now, how do we do it? We have to embrace it. We have to leave oil faster than oil leaves us. And that actually means, if you look at what some countries have done, I mean, look at Dubai, we all know the story, is deliberately channeling a lot of the remaining wealth that's still coming out of that oil, right, into diversifying the economy. So, manufacturing, bringing back manufacturing, or even at the minimum, getting it back to where it was, as TJ educated us, in 1980, is like the first step. right? Emphasizing our agriculture. And of course, we all know agriculture fundamentally is about logistics and distribution, not just about farming, right? How do we get things from where they're planted and produced to where they are, consumed, or where value is added? We also know that for agriculture, for us to get the most value out of our agriculture, we have to process things locally, right? So if you look at a lot of our large manufacturers and multinationals, even as of today, they still source a good amount of their inputs, even their raw inputs, internationally, right? Why is that? There's a lot of those things they can get locally, but they can't get them because of very simple problems ranging from logistics or to technology, basic technology that should be applied, during the farming process, right? For example, we can export, say, our groundnuts to internationally because it has aflatoxin or whatever it is they call it, and with just a minimal intervention during the farming process, we can make it hit the right level of quality, not just for local consumers but also global consumers, right? So diversification is we need to move it away from rhetoric, from this wonderful, nice conversation that we've been having for decades, to actually doing it. And doing it means supporting agriculture, supporting manufacturing, providing targeted policies, to make it easier for them to scale, to access funding. I think we haven't talked a lot about access to capital, and I know TJ and Jeffrey probably don't have that problem, right? But a large number of players in the logistics and agriculture space, still face that problem. A lot of what we still do in Nigeria is subsistence farming. No country built a massive economy out of subsistence farming, right? And I know this might not sound very popular. We still talk a lot about, providing, interventions at a smallholder farmer level. And while that is important, what will actually, take us to the next level is large-scale mechanized farming that can deliver consistent inputs at the right specifications, at the right volumes that, global manufacturers need, right? So I think at some point we have to move from the rhetoric, and it's a painful process, right? But the medium to long-term benefits are unquestioned. So I guess, diversification is really about, taking the hard decisions, right? Channeling all the wealth that's still coming out of oil right now into manufacturing, providing very clear, very strong, actionable incentives for manufacturing companies, to access their inputs locally, to produce more, to hire more people, to rely less on having to import skills or import inputs or import things that they can access, locally. So, I mean, there's a lot to say about this, but I think the key thing for me is we have to move away from rhetoric to actually putting our money where our mouth is.
Wow. Thank you all for that. I wish we could go on, but we have a word that it's been a great session. The feedback so far is awesome, and we are going to have to wrap this up. Thank you all very much. I think next time if I'm coming to such a loaded panel, I would also wear my own jacket, because clearly I wasn't fully protected from Kafir. I think we're good. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you.
Thanks, Aya.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ayo.
Thanks, Ayo.
Thank you.
Cheers.